welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something that honestly feels ripped straight from science fiction, but it's very real for researchers, for policymakers, NASA and UAPs.
Unidentified anomalous phenomena.
Exactly.
Wow.
And NASA, for so many of us, they represent, our best shot at understanding what's out there.
Right, the gold standard almost.
So it's only natural to ask, what do they know about these UAPs? Are we actually getting the whole story?
Or is there more?
Yeah.
Maybe even evidence of stuff, technology that just defies what we currently understand.
Yeah.
Perhaps hidden away somewhere.
Tucked away in classified files, secret programs.
Yeah.
That's the big question, isn't it?
That's exactly what we want to dig into today. Our mission here is to explore that tension. You've got NASA, committed fundamentally to open science.
Transparency, yeah.
And then you have these persistent claims, these allegations of hidden UAP knowledge.
Yeah.
And we've pulled together quite a range of sources.
Right.
We've got the official NASA reports, laying out their scientific angle. But we also have accounts from whistleblowers.
Right. People claiming inside knowledge.
Alleging these hidden programs. And even testimony from astronauts, people who've been up there and reported seeing things they couldn't explain.
Okay, so let's start there. What's actually feeding this suspicion? Why do people think NASA might be holding back on UAPs?
Well, it really comes down to this sort of dual role NASA plays, or is perceived to play.
How so?
On one hand, they are absolutely a scientific body. Their whole foundation is transparency, sharing data, peer review, all that.
Right, science in the open.
But they're also part of the larger U.S. government structure. And that structure includes agencies like the DoD, the intelligence community.
Where secrecy is kind of the default mode for national security reasons.
Exactly. Classification is essential there. And UAPs, well, just by their nature, unidentified things, potentially advanced tech, showing up in restricted airspace, they inevitably pump up against those national security concerns.
Ah, I see. So that overlap creates doubt.
It creates fertile ground for skepticism. Yeah. Can NASA really be completely open about something that might be tangled up in classified military or intelligence matters? That's the core tension we're exploring.
That makes sense. And, it's interesting how the language itself has changed. It really wasn't that long ago we just said UFOs.
Right. That term, unidentified flying object, it just got so loaded over the years.
Yeah, instantly brings to mind little green men for a lot of people.
Precisely. So the shift to unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, very deliberate, is an attempt to sort of destigmatize the whole topic.
Make it sound more serious, more objective.
Exactly. Encourage proper scientific study, government scrutiny, shift the focus away from assumptions about aliens and onto the actual observable data. What are we actually seeing?
And now we're even hearing unidentified anomalous phenomena. What's that extra word, anomalous, doing there?
Good question. That came about more recently, following the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2023. NASA formally adopted it late in 2022.
To align with the Pentagon's UAP office.
Yeah, ARR.
Exactly, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. And anomalous broadens the scope significantly. It's not just flying objects anymore.
Ah, okay. So what else does it include?
It explicitly brings in transmedium objects or devices, things that can apparently move between, say, the air and water, or air and space, and also submerged objects, things seen underwater.
Wow, okay, so it's a much wider net.
It is. And this coordinated shift across government, using the same terminology, it signals a clear strategy. Reframe how we think about these events, emphasize the broader possibilities, the national security angle.
And maybe distance it further from just being about potential extraterrestrials.
That seems to be part of it, yes. It wasn't just changing a word. It was about laying a more credible foundation for scientific and government investigation, moving away from this sensationalism often tied to UFOs.
Okay, so NASA formally jumps into UAP research in June 2022. But this topic, like you said, it's been simmering for ages. Why the official move then? That's right. June 2022 was the official announcement. A big step. They set up an independent study team.
Independent, meaning separate from the military's effort.
Mostly, yes. Independent in its scientific approach. Their mandate was strictly scientific. Apply NASA's expertise research, aeronautics, data analysis to this problem.
And what were they hoping to achieve?
Well, several things. Assess any potential risks to air safety, obviously, that's a big one.
Sure.
And fundamentally just explore the unknown, which, let's face it, is kind of NASA's whole reason for being, right?
True.
Now, it's important to note, while this study was separate from the DoD's ARO group, they did agree to share findings. But, and this is key, the NASA team was limited. They could only use unclassified data for their analysis.
Ah, okay. So no digging into potentially classified military encounters or anything like that.
Correct. Strictly the unclassified domain.
So tell me about this independent study team. Who was on it? What were they actually asked to do?
NASA put together a really diverse group. 15 experts, scientists, technical folks.
Yeah.
A broad range of fields.
Good.
It was chaired by David Spergel, an astrophysicist. And their job, set up in May 2022, wasn't really about looking back at old UFO cases.
No, so not like reviewing Roswell or anything.
No. Their focus was firmly on the future. How can NASA contribute going forward?
Right, so like a roadmap.
Exactly. Develop a roadmap for NASA's future role. What existing data could be useful? How can we collect better data in the future? How can NASA's unique scientific tools help us understand UAPs better?
Makes sense.
Their work kicked off in October 2022. They had a public meeting in May 2023 to share some initial thoughts.
I remember seeing headlines about that.
And then the final report came out in September 2023.
And the big takeaway, what did this panel of experts conclude?
The main finding, and they were pretty clear about this, was that based on all the unclassified data they reviewed and looking at the existing peer-reviewed science, they found absolutely no credible evidence suggesting an extraterrestrial origin for any UAP.
Wow. Okay, no little green men in the data they saw.
Not according to their report. They really stressed that the whole ET hypothesis, that should be a last resort, only after you've rigorously ruled out every other possible explanation.
Okay, that's a strong conclusion. But surely they ran into challenges. What stopped them from getting more definitive answers?
Oh, absolutely. The biggest hurdle, and they hit this point again and again in the report, was just the profound lack of high-quality data.
How so? What was wrong with the data they had?
It's often just messy. You've got sensors that aren't properly calibrated, data collected inconsistently. Sometimes multiple sensors are recording something, but the data isn't synced up. Often crucial context is missing. Exactly when, where, atmospheric conditions, things like that. Metadata, basically.
Right, the details you need to actually analyze something properly.
Exactly. And there's not enough baseline data on ordinary things, birds, balloons, atmospheric effects, to compare these unusual sightings against.
So it's hard to tell if something is truly anomalous or just weirdly recorded normal stuff?
Precisely. All these issues combined make it incredibly difficult, scientifically speaking, to draw firm conclusions about that small percentage of UAP sightings that do remain unexplained.
It's like trying to solve a really complex puzzle.
With only a few blurry pieces and no picture on the box lid.
Yeah, so it's not that there aren't sightings, it's that the information about the sightings is often poor.
That's the core issue. And the report mentions similar findings from ARIR, the Pentagon's group. They said that after they really dig into reports, only a tiny fraction, maybe 2 to 5%, actually remain genuinely anomalous.
And the rest? What do they turn out to be?
Usually pretty mundane stuff. Weather balloons, drones flying where they shouldn't, misidentified planes, clutter, space launches, even planets looking weird.
Okay.
Plus, there's still that stigma problem. Pilots, others, might see something but hesitate to report it.
Fear of ridicule or impacting their careers.
Exactly. Which, of course, just makes the data problem worse. Fewer reports, less chance of capturing high-quality data.
It's a vicious cycle. So what did the report actually recommend NASA do about all this? How can they get better data?
The recommendations were pretty practical, focused on improving things systematically.
Like what?
Well, first, use what NASA already has. They've got tons of Earth-observing satellites collecting atmospheric data constantly. Maybe some of that is relevant.
Okay. Leverage existing assets. Makes sense.
Then, drastically improve data collection standards for any future observations. Use multiple calibrated sensors simultaneously. Collect all that crucial metadata, the who, what, where, when, how.
Get the full picture.
Right. They also suggested exploring AI and machine learning to help sift through huge data sets to spot anomalies.
But with a caveat, I assume. Garbage in, garbage out.
Absolutely. AI is only as good as the data you feed it. So data quality is still paramount.
What else?
They floated the idea of public crowdsourcing, maybe using smartphone apps for reports, assisting AR to create a standardized reporting system across the federal government.
That seems important, getting everyone on the same page.
Definitely. And using NASA's reputation, its credibility, to help reduce that reporting stigma we talked about.
Yeah, if NASA takes it seriously, maybe others will too.
That's the hope. Plus, more collaboration with the FAA using existing safety reporting systems, and even working with commercial satellite companies for more data.
It sounds like a very thorough plan, but focused almost entirely on the future. on getting new data.
It is very forward-looking, yes.
Does that approach, though, maybe unintentionally skirt the issue of all those past claims? The alleged cover-ups, the classified evidence people talk about?
That's a really sharp observation.
Yeah.
And yeah, for people who are convinced that there's compelling evidence already locked away,
Yeah.
NASA's focus on future unclassified data can definitely look like a way to avoid confronting those really thorny historical allegations.
Like, we can't comment on classified stuff, but look, we're doing science going forward.
Exactly. It positions NASA as the objective scientist tackling a future data problem, which conveniently sidesteps demands to declassify past secrets potentially held elsewhere, like in DoD or intelligence files.
And the focus on AI, machine learning, that also reinforces looking at new data streams, not necessarily digging into old files or alleged physical evidence.
It does lean that way, yes. So for some observers, this future-focused, unclassified approach might feel like, well, like a carefully managed way to handle a very sensitive, politically charged topic without opening Pandora's box.
So how did NASA itself respond? Did they just accept the report, or are they actually doing things?
Oh, they acted on it pretty quickly. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson announced they were appointing NASA's first ever Director of UAP Research.
Okay, a dedicated role.
Yes, Mark McInerney.
Right.
His job is basically to take that report's recommendations and turn them into an actual action plan to implement NASA's scientific strategy for UAP.
And then NASA's public stance remains.
Consistent. They emphasize transparency, scientific rigor, openness. They see their role as making a scientific contribution to the bigger government-wide effort led by ARO.
Using their unique skills.
Their unique skills and data, focusing on the unclassified side, to benefit public understanding and, importantly, aerospace safety.
Okay, so that's the official NASA story. Science, data, future plans. But like you said at the start, there's this whole other narrative running parallel.
A very different narrative.
Often much more dramatic. Whistleblowers, astronauts.
Exactly. It stands in pretty stark contrast to NASA's careful, data-driven approach. This counter-narrative alleges, well, quite a lot.
Such as?
Long-running, super-secret government programs, maybe involving private contractors working outside normal oversight.
Well,
Programs supposedly dedicated to recovering and trying to reverse engineer technology, described as non-human.
whoa. Okay, so not just sightings, but actual craft.
Hmm.
Materials.
That's the claim. Recovered craft, sometimes intact, sometimes crashed. Even claims of recovered biologics of unknown origin.
Biologics. Like bodies.
The term used is often non-human biologics.
Well,
And this narrative includes allegations of extreme secrecy, suppression of information, even claims of harm coming to people to keep it all quiet.
that's intense. And the name most associated with these claims recently is David Grush.
Yes, David Grush. His emergence has really amplified this counter-narrative.
Remind us of his background again. He wasn't just some random guy.
No, definitely not. He's a decorated former Air Force intelligence officer, served on the Pentagon's UAP task force. Highly credible background on paper.
Okay, and what did he claim?
In June 2023, he went public, saying he'd interviewed numerous current and former government and military officials.
People with supposed direct knowledge.
That's what he asserted, yes. People with knowledge of these alleged secret programs. Then in July 2023, he testified under oath before a House subcommittee.
Right, I remember that hearing. Big news. What were his key allegations under oath?
He stated under oath that while working for the UAP task force, he learned about a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
A program he was blocked from accessing.
Correct. He said when he tried to get access, he was denied. He testified his claims were based on info from about 40 witnesses.
40.
Yeah, 40 witnesses. People he described as having long, credible government service records. He said they provided compelling evidence, photos, documents, classified oral testimony.
And based on that, he believes.
He stated his firm belief that the U.S. government possesses intact and partially intact craft of non-human origin.
Non-human origin. He actually said that under oath.
He did. And perhaps the most startling claim, recovery of biologics. Biological material that, according to his sources with first-hand knowledge, was assessed as non-human.
Wow. And he also mentioned harm and funding issues.
Yes, very serious allegations. Potential harm, even murder, he suggested, to maintain secrecy, and misappropriation of government funds to finance these hidden operations.
And he filed an official complaint about this.
He did. A formal whistleblower complaint to the Intelligence Community Inspector General, the ICI. And according to Grush, the ICIG found his complaint both credible and urgent.
Which implies potential lawbreaking or serious issues.
It suggests the ICI felt there was enough substance to warrant further investigation, yes. Grush also claimed he faced very brutal retaliation administrative attacks, threats for coming forward. That's reportedly being investigated, too.
Extraordinary claims. And he's not entirely alone in alleging secrecy, right? You mentioned astronauts earlier.
That's right. This counter-narrative also gets support from accounts of some very famous astronauts, pioneers of spaceflight, who spoke out after their NASA careers.
Like Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14, walked on the moon. He was pretty vocal.
Extremely vocal. Edgar Mitchell became a firm believer that Earth has been visited by ETs. He stated it repeatedly.
Did he claim to see anything himself?
Not directly during his mission, as far as
No.
I know, but he claimed he was made aware of a major government cover-up, especially regarding Roswell.
Based on what?
He said based on conversations with locals in Roswell after his flight, people who confided in him. He also believed many other pilots and astronauts had seen things, but were discouraged from reporting.
And he called for disclosure.
Absolutely. He founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences to explore consciousness and the universe, and he argued passionately that the government needed to come clean about any ET knowledge for humanity's sake. He believed, based on his contacts, that some unexplained events really did point to ETs.
And Gordon Cooper, another big name from the Mercury program.
Gordon Cooper, yeah, another original Mercury 7 astronaut. He was also quite open about his belief in UFOs and government secrecy.
Did he have his own sightings?
He reported seeing a formation of objects back in 1951 over Germany when he was a pilot. And more famously, he claimed that in 1957 at Edwards Air Force Base.
The famous test pilot base.
Right. He said he witnessed a saucer-shaped object land nearby and that a camera crew he directed filmed it.
Filmed it landing.
That was his claim. He said he reviewed the film, it clearly showed the object, but then high-ranking officials confiscated it and it vanished.
Wow. And he spoke about this later.
Yes, later in life, he even addressed a UN committee, stating his conviction that ET vehicles were visiting Earth and governments were covering it up.
So we have Mitchell and Cooper. Are there lots of other astronauts with similar stories, or are they the main ones?
Mitchell and Cooper are definitely the most prominent and outspoken. Other reported astronaut sightings often get cited, but many have more, let's say, conventional explanations when you dig deeper.
Such as?
Well, James McDivitt's Gemini 4 sighting, likely space debris. Frank Borman on Gemini 7, probably their own booster rocket stage.
Okay.
The claims about Neil Armstrong seeing UFOs on the moon during Apollo 11 mostly seem to trace back to rumors and a known hoax online. He did report seeing parts they jettisoned, but that's different.
Right. And Buzz Aldrin.
Aldrin has clarified that comments he made about seeing a light on Apollo 11 were misinterpreted. He was talking about sunlight reflecting off panels from their own spacecraft separation.
What about that weird music the Apollo 10 crew heard?
Ah, yes, the space music on the far side of the moon. That did initially puzzle the crew. You can hear it on the recordings. But the accepted explanation now is radio interference between the lunar module and the command module. Makes sense, given the equipment and location.
So, mostly explainable stuff, apart from maybe Mitchell and Cooper's strong beliefs based on their sources?
Largely, yes. There are also some more fringe claims out there, people like Clark McClellan claiming to see an alien on the shuttle, or David Sarita analyzing NASA footage. But those are generally less verified and more disputed. So a few prominent astronaut believers, but most specific sightings have plausible, non-exotic explanations.
Okay, so you have Grush's explosive testimony, these astronaut accounts. What's the official pushback? How do NASA and the DoD respond to these direct allegations of cover-ups and retrieved craft?
Well, the official response has been pretty consistent, particularly regarding Grush. Both DoD and NASA have put out statements.
And they say?
They say that AAO, the Pentagon's office, has looked into these kinds of claims thoroughly and has found no verifiable information to back them up.
No verifiable info about possessing or reverse engineering ET materials.
Correct. No verifiable information supporting claims of past or present programs doing that. The key word they always stress is verifiable.
Meaning proof, hard evidence.
Exactly. Officials consistently point to the total lack of publicly available testable physical evidence for these extraordinary claims. And Grush himself, remember, admitted under oath he hasn't personally seen the alleged craft or the biologics.
Right. His testimony is based on what these other witnesses told him.
Precisely. And that reliance on secondhand accounts, however credible the sources might seem, without independent physical proof. Well, it makes many in the science and defense fields remain highly skeptical.
They need more than just testimony.
They need something tangible, something testable. Skeptics also point out, where's the corroborating evidence? No widespread telescope detections of alien ships. No confirmed artifacts from crash sites that have stood up to scientific scrutiny.
Which brings us back to that catch-22 you mentioned earlier.
It really does. It's a frustrating loop.
The whistleblowers say, the proof is classified, that's why you can't see it.
And they claim they've told the right people in secret, but can't legally show it to the public.
While the officials say, we've looked, even within classified channels, and there's nothing verifiable there.
Right. So who do you believe? It forces you, the listener, into making a judgment based on trust, not objective proof. Do you trust the insiders claiming secret knowledge or the official denials?
And the classification system itself becomes the barrier to knowing for sure.
Exactly. It's meant for national security. But here it inadvertently fuels suspicion and conspiracy theories because it prevents public verification. It's a genuine dilemma. You're asked to trust sources that might not be fully open while also evaluating these incredible claims based on stuff you can't independently check. It really makes you think about what counts as evidence when proof is hidden.
Something else that seems relevant. Many of these insider claims seem to come out years, even decades, after the person leaves government service. Does that time lag make it harder to verify things?
It definitely adds another layer of difficulty. Sure, being retired might give someone more freedom to speak.
Less fear of official reprisal, maybe?
Perhaps. But the passage of time is tough on verification. Evidence, if it ever existed, might be lost, moved, degraded. Key witnesses might have passed away.
Memories fade too, right? Or change over time.
Absolutely. Memories aren't perfect recordings. And relevant official documents, they might still be classified or maybe even routinely destroyed based on record retention schedules.
So relying on decades-old recollections, however sincere they might be, makes independent confirmation really, really challenging.
Extremely challenging without solid contemporary documentation or corroborating witnesses.
Okay, let's pivot a bit and look at some specific incidents that always seem to pop up in UAP discussions. The STS-75 tether incident from '96 is a classic.
Yes, the tether incident. That footage is compelling visually.
Remind us what happened.
So, STS-75, Space Shuttle Columbia, they were trying this ambitious experiment deploying a satellite on a really long tether, like miles long.
Okay.
During deployment, the tether snapped, broke, and the video from the shuttle showed the broken tether, the satellite drifting away, and lots of bright little objects moving around against the blackest space.
Objects that looked weird.
They looked self-illuminated, and some seemed to move in non-straight lines. The footage got out, and boom, instantly labeled the UFO tether incident. People saw it as potential proof.
So what was NASA's explanation for these dots of light?
The official NASA line, backed up by astronaut Tom Jones, who was actually on that mission,
Okay, an eyewitness.
is that they were just ice crystals and little bits of debris, probably from the shuttle systems, maybe the tether itself, frozen water vapor, tiny fragments.
It's illuminated by the sun.
Exactly, shining brightly in the direct sunlight against the dark background. Jones and other astronauts have seeing stuff like that floating outside the windows was pretty common on missions. It might look strange on video, but it's just particles drifting.
But not everyone buys the ice crystal explanation.
No, definitely not. Critics look at the footage and point to movements that seem to them non-ballistic, like something under control, changing direction in ways inert debris wouldn't.
So what are the alternative theories?
Some suggest more exotic things, like maybe undiscovered atmospheric phenomena, even theories about plasma life forms being attracted to the electromagnetism of the tether experiment. David Sarita, who we mentioned, analyzed it and concluded they were intelligently controlled craft.
But it's hard to tell for sure from the video.
That's the core problem, the visual ambiguity. You're looking at dots of light against blackness. There's no clear sense of scale, distance, or a fixed reference point. So judging true speed and movement is incredibly difficult. It leaves room for wildly different interpretations.
Okay, let's move closer to home, relatively speaking. The moon, Apollo. Always lots of stories about mysteries on the moon.
Ah, yes. The moon landing conspiracy theories are a whole separate thing, but UAP claims related to Apollo also persist.
We already touched on Armstrong and Aldrin, the Armstrong claim being a hoax. Aldrin's comments misinterpreted.
Correct. And the Gemini sightings, McDivitt and Borman, almost certainly just nearby man-made debris, as space historians like James Oberg and the astronauts themselves concluded.
What about the Apollo 10 music again? That seems genuinely weird.
It was genuinely weird to the crew at the time. Hearing those strange whistling sounds on the far side, totally out of contact with Earth, you can hear their surprise on the tapes. But the technical explanation, radio frequency interference between the LM and CSM radios, holds up pretty well.
Okay. What about claims of NASA hiding photographic evidence, airbrushing things out of moon photos?
That's another persistent one. People point to supposed anomalies or structures airbrushed out or entire photo frames missing from archives.
And the reality?
Well, NASA maintains huge, publicly accessible archives of Apollo imagery online. Anyone can go look. Most of the airbrushed claims usually turn out to be interpretations of shadows, weird geology, lens flares, or even processing artifacts from duplicating photos back in the day. There's no solid evidence of NASA systematically hiding alien bases or anything like that in the photos. There's often just a gap between what the astronauts experienced and how the public later interprets the images.
Okay, let's jump to Mars. The rovers send back amazing pictures, and sometimes people see things.
Oh yeah, Mars anomalies are a constant source of online buzz.
The most famous being the face on Mars, right?
Absolutely. From the Viking 1 orbiter back in '76. Looked uncannily like a face in that first low-res picture.
But later images.
Much higher resolution images from Mars Global Surveyor and others showed it clearly. It's a natural mesa, a big rock formation where shadows and erosion just happen to create that face-like illusion from a certain angle and low resolution. Classic pareidolia.
Pareidolia seeing patterns, like faces in random things.
Exactly, like seeing animals in clouds. Our brains are wired to do it. And we see this constantly with rover images, too. Weird-shaped rocks get called fossils or statues or machine parts.
Gordon Cooper mentioned seeing some of those Mars images, didn't he?
He did acknowledge seeing some puzzling features, but also questioned if they were artificial, recognizing natural geology could be responsible. It's important not to confuse these interpretations with actual rover technical problems.
Right, like when Curiosity's wheels got damaged.
Yeah, or memory issues on Curiosity and Spirit, or when Opportunity finally died because a dust storm blocked its solar panels. Those were real engineering challenges of operating on Mars, not signs of UAP or aliens interfering.
It really does seem like so much evidence comes down to interpreting photos and videos that are often fuzzy or ambiguous. How do scientists try to analyze this stuff objectively?
They use several techniques. One really important concept is parallax.
Parallax, explain that.
It's how an object's apparent position changes based on your viewing angle or movement. It can totally fool you about speed and distance. The famous Go Fast Navy video is a prime example.
How so?
That object looked like it was screaming fast right near the water. But careful analysis, accounting for the jet's movement and the camera angle, showed it was actually much higher up and moving at maybe only 30–40 miles per hour. Parallax made it look faster and lower.
Ah, okay. Perspective matters. What else?
Simple misidentification is huge. Weather balloons look weird, especially at dusk or dawn. Drones are everywhere now. Birds at a distance can look odd. Even plastic bags floating high up. Glints off satellites. Bright planets near the horizon. Lots of normal things get misidentified.
And sometimes it's just fake.
Oh, absolutely. Deliberate hoaxes have a long history in ufology. People do it for attention, money, who knows why. Think George Adamski's photos in the 50s, the infamous alien autopsy film, the more recent Roswell slides.
All debunked eventually.
Yes, usually through careful forensic analysis of the images, or lack of any real physical evidence. Which brings us back to the main point, data quality.
Right. Fuzzy pictures, short video clips.
With no scale, no reference points, no data from other sensors telling you distance or speed or temperature. It makes real science almost impossible. Often something stays unidentified simply because there isn't enough good information to identify it, not because it's proven to be something extraordinary.
So we keep circling back to the same fundamental problem. The data just isn't good enough most of the time.
That's precisely what NASA's own independent study concluded. It's the single biggest roadblock to making real scientific progress on UAPs.
Science needs solid, repeatable, verifiable evidence.
Exactly. And that's often missing with anecdotal accounts or blurry photos. This need for rigor can clash sometimes with beliefs in the enthusiast community where maybe personal testimony or interpreting ambiguous footage feels convincing enough.
And platforms like YouTube probably amplify the less rigorous stuff.
Oh, undoubtedly. Media, especially online, plays a huge role in shaping perceptions, sometimes spreading claims that haven't been vetted at all.
Then there's that whole tension we discussed earlier, transparency versus secrecy.
Right. NASA wants to be open. It's a science agency. But UAPs touch on national security.
Could it be adversary tech? Are classified sensors involved in tracking them?
Those are legitimate concerns that necessitate some level of confidentiality. But that necessary secrecy, even if it's just about protecting U.S. capabilities, can easily look like a cover-up of something more exotic to people who are already suspicious.
Making it even more important to reduce the stigma around reporting.
Crucial. That was a key recommendation from the NASA panel, and people like Ryan Graves, the former Navy pilot, hammer this point home. We need more pilots, more observers, feeling comfortable reporting what they see without fear.
The fact that even NASA's own study team members reportedly got harassed shows how charged this topic is.
It really does. It's incredibly sensitive, touches on deep-seated beliefs and fears.
So, looking ahead, what's NASA actually going to do? What are the concrete steps based on their study?
They intend to follow through on those recommendations. Leverage their Earth-observing satellites, see if useful data is already being collected.
All right.
Explore AI and machine learning more carefully for finding anomalies in big data sets. Push for better data standards, calibrated sensors, full metadata for any future relevant observations.
And the crowdsourcing idea, reporting apps.
They're going to explore that and contribute their scientific know-how to AERO's broader government effort, help standardize reporting.
It sounds like a multi-pronged approach.
It is. And interestingly, doing this kind of rigorous UAP science could have spin-off benefits.
How so?
Better understanding of atmospheric physics, maybe. Improved air safety protocols. New remote sensing tech. Even better national security surveillance, potentially. It's not just about finding aliens, even if that's the headline grabber.
But despite all this NASA study, HRO's work, the hearings that belief in a deep government cover-up doesn't seem to be going away.
No, it seems incredibly persistent.
Why is it so resilient, do you think?
Well, when you have credible-sounding figures like David Grush making such dramatic claims under oath, it powerfully reinforces that narrative for many people. It makes the official investigations look, to them, like maybe just window dressing.
Maintaining an illusion of transparency.
That's the suspicion. Plus, you have decades of historical government secrecy around UFOs, even if it was mostly about hiding secret planes like the U-2 or stealth tech, that history breeds mistrust.
So the current level of engagement might not be enough to convince the true believers.
It seems likely that for those already convinced of a cover-up, these current efforts, while unprecedented in some ways, won't fully dispel that deep-seated mistrust.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, what's the essential takeaway for you, for our listeners, about NASA and UAPs? Where do things stand?
I think you're left with these two starkly contrasting narratives. You've got NASA, the scientific powerhouse, saying, look, we're investigating scientifically, using open data, and we see no credible evidence of ETs.
The science-first approach.
Right. And then you have this counter-narrative driven by whistleblowers like Grush, some astronauts, alleging this massive decades-long conspiracy involving recovered non-human tech and maybe even biology.
Two very different realities being described?
Completely. And based strictly on the evidence that's publicly available and verifiable right now, those extraordinary claims of crashed alien ships and recovered bodies, they remain unconfirmed. There's no public proof that stands up to scientific scrutiny, no conclusive evidence of a NASA conspiracy to hide things.
But crucially for the believers, that lack of public proof isn't disproof.
Exactly. For them, it is the proof of how effective the alleged cover-up is. That classification catch-22 again, the history of secrecy feeds it.
And we still have that small percentage of cases that genuinely remain unexplained.
We do. And that lingering mystery keeps the door open. UAPs sit right at this fascinating crossroads. Science, national security, folklore, public fascination, and these huge questions about, are we alone?
So NASA's current path is one way forward.
It's the scientific path forward, yeah. Trying to get better data, apply rigorous methods. Whether that approach will ever satisfy everyone or overcome the deep belief in secrets, that's an open question. It probably depends on time and much, much better data.
The search goes on.
In one way or another, definitely.
That really leaves us with something to think about. Maybe consider how the very idea of unidentified plays on our own psychology, our need to know, our desire for answers, and how complex our relationship is with trust, institutions, and the unknown. Thanks for digging into this with us today.